Okay. Okay, so I would like to welcome everybody to our webinar. This is on topic 6, which is order. I had a really good time thinking about this because there's a lot that can be done with this, including priorities and simplifying life, and it's just a great topic. But before we get to that, let's look at our agenda because there are a lot of exciting things going on here. The first one is talk about our special Chai Mitzvah initiative to encourage our teens to visit Israel on a quality educational trip this summer. So far, we've granted $2,000 to each of 9 teens for their summer Israel trips. And just a reminder, the parameters of the grant are in the email I sent a while back.
Yes, honey.
So feel free to forward the email to your students' families. Let me know if you have any questions. Print it out and put it on a bulletin board if that's how you communicate. However you communicate with your families, but only of the teens that are actually in the program. We're excited to help whoever we can get to Israel. And then more exciting things, we're working on the Chai Mitzvah Bible Wraps curriculum. We expect to have it ready by July 1st. So it'll be available to schools to use beginning in September. We're working at New Cage to have Matt Barr do a program there on the Monday night, which is like the second night of Cage. So if you're thinking of going to Cage, let me know. We have some special opportunities we're working on. So, if you're going to be there, we're excited to talk to you. And the next thing, I want to thank everyone who filled out the doodle poll about Chai Mitzvah Mitzvah Day. It's amazing. I gave 4 weeks to choose from, and the votes were exactly perfectly divided. Exactly perfectly. So, and because of that, I didn't want to pick 1 week. I had a good suggestion. We'll make it Chai Mitzvah Mitzvah month. It'll take place during the month of ER. That's in the Omer is counted during this period, so we can bring that into that layer of meaning into this period about self-reflection and spiritual renewal. So I'll send out more information with a follow-up email to this webinar, but that's what we're going to do, and it'll be really exciting. We're going to take part in different social action opportunities locally and share them on social media. So I'll have like our own Instagram hashtag, and then all the Chai Mitzvah kids will be able to share and see what the other Chai Mitzvah kids are doing for social action. That should be really exciting. Next, I want to thank you again for sharing interesting stuff on our Facebook page. So some exciting things. Ellen, you had a couple of really nice things you shared with your students. Yes, about the homelessness, the representatives that came from Suncoast Partnership and spoke. That was really nice.
Yeah.
And the Tu B'Shvat thing that they did. You're lucky you're in Florida because Tu B'Shvat here, we can't.
Yeah, you can't go outside, right?
But I think it's really exciting that you were in a native plant habitat. That's really wonderful. So that's great. Lisa Goldblatt-Friedman's class examined some text for tzedakah and community Lit Chasadim. They brainstormed ideas and put into blessings bags. They're going to solicit donations and assemble these bags and give them out. And then I want to thank Rabbi David Steinberg. I'm sure he'll be watching this later. He shared a really great lesson plan on equanimity, and it's especially helpful to people with older students, but for everyone it's helpful. So those are some of our great things. And so thanks for sharing. So does anybody want to say anything before we start our themes? Okay. So, as we know, the Hebrew prayer books called the Siddur and the Passover Seder are both derived from the same Hebrew root, which means order. And just like the prayer book has a set order of worship, the Passover Seder has 15 steps, beginning with Kadesh and ending with Nirtzah. So it's a good time of year to think about order. What does the notion of order mean in the rest of our lives? The Musar masters were very strict about this midah. They felt that it was an essential tool for spiritual well-being. In this lesson, we'll study the 3 Musar texts, and it'll help us think about ways in which we might be either overly rigid or overly lax regarding structures of time and space in our lives. So the themes are order. Seder is an essential tool for spiritual well-being, yes. Can you unmute yourself, or do you need me to?
Yeah, but I'm waiting for you to finish it up.
Oh, you're no longer making noise. Whatever it was, it's done. What were you going to say?
Finish what you were saying, then I have a comment.
Okay, great. So the idea is to be neither overly rigid nor overly lax regarding structures of time and space in your life.
It struck me that there's some ironies here. That first of all, right now we're heading into Purim, and I wanted to introduce a lesson about order, giving them a chance to talk about the characters in Megillat Esther, and talk about chaos in their life. Lots, fate, randomness, chaos theory, and then also liminality, role reversal, the possibility of grabbing hold of situations and changing them as a way of putting order into a life that doesn't appear to have order. Second irony is with the Passover Seder, the goal of the Seder is supposed to be freedom. But
right.
the means of getting to freedom require order and discipline, and have them talk through some steps that they might let them pick a Pharaoh or a Mitzrayim, a narrowness in their life, and talk about steps that they would take parallel to a Passover Seder to free themselves from that. And then a third irony being that the Siddur itself, that before we get to that prayer, Mechamocha, about freedom, we have to have a prayer talking about creation, another one about revelation, and understanding how those flow together, so that order and chaos are meshed, and it's only through understanding that mesh do we create not just order, but
Yeah, I think it's even ironic that freedom can come from order, because you can think of order as being rigid, and that's not really what we need. It's more like structure, and I think that's really a really good point. And especially, so this is the March topic, so it will actually, be after Purim, but it's so good that you brought this up, because it's a good preparation, a good thought. It's really excellent to compare. I mean, it's a great irony. It's a great thoughtful thought. So thank you so much. It's true. And so let's keep this in mind as we go through thinking about our texts. And also we can relate it to equanimity. We can go back and think about what we did last time, and we can see how putting a layer of order on this can make it more or less, make it work more or less. So let's go to the first text. But even before we begin the text, let's talk about the order or disorder in our lives. You can ask the students whether, after they learned about equanimity, if they added anything to their life. Did they meditate? Did they start to observe Shabbat in some way? Did they have some other spiritual practice, like taking walks or journaling or something that they might do to make themselves have more equanimity? And then see, do they do this at a set time every day? Or do they do this like randomly when they feel like they need it? And how would having a set time in place for this impact on their lives? Would it make them feel more calm or less calm? And it's probably a personal thing, but it would be an interesting thing to start the conversation that way. Because now we can think about what we're going to study next, which is order, and see how it affects us in our lives. So the text says, first a person should put one's house in order, then one's town, and then the world. Okay, so what does Rabbi Salanter mean by putting one's house in order? Any suggestions? My thought was maybe it's priorities. I'm hoping Harley will come back soon, because I know he's going to have something to say about that. But does anybody else have a comment? Oh, good, you're back. All right. What do you think Rabbi Salanter means by putting your house in order? Harley, I know you always have the best insights, so I'm waiting for you to weigh in on this, and I'll tell you what I thought.
Well, it's starting internally. You start looking inside yourself, then you look at what's immediately around you, and then you kind of expand your way out in order to create the structure and discipline to interact with things in holy ways.
That's very interesting. I was thinking that it might have to do with priorities at first, putting your own house in order, and then when you go to your town, I don't know, I still see it as priorities, but I can see what you said also. And I feel like if things fall into place, then the world.
What I'm suggesting is that the word house starts with what is internal inside of you,
Uh-huh.
then spreads out to the immediate things physically around you. If I want to structure my life, which I constantly have to redo, the first thing I look at is my desk or my bathroom sink or something right around me. Okay, and then I look at the next part of the house and kind of expand out. So even within each one of these categories, house, town, and world.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, unmute Rachel there. Hi, I'm unmuting. Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's part of what Rabbi Salanter meant for sure. So that leads us to a discussion of how do you prioritize the hierarchy in your life? How do you decide what's important? I think for teenagers it's really important too because they have so much pressure on themselves, and I'm sure they have trouble prioritizing between friends and schoolwork and their future, which is always, their parents are reminding them of, and all kinds of things. But they need to have priorities to put themselves in order, I think. So that's something that's very good to discuss. And then, Rabbi Salanter was the first person responsible for creating the Musar movement in the 19th century. So for many Jews, Musar is a way of putting not just their own house, but their lives in order and the whole world in order. So they may need more, let's say, equanimity in their lives, but the whole world needs it too. They may need more generosity, but the world needs it too. And one of the things we can look into as we go forward in this is how Musar can serve as a tikkun olam, a way of bringing healing and repair to the world. There's some suggestions later on of things they can do, and I think that it would be good to relate it to this text as well as the next one. Before I go on, does anybody have a comment of any kind? Okay. So let's look at the second text by Rabbi Shlomo. I hope I'm pronouncing his name properly. Here's a little background about him. His name is Shlomo, but his name in German was Wilhelm, and he was a Haredi rabbi born in Berlin in 1914. But he was raised in a secular home. He became a Baal Tshuva when he was studying at the University of Berlin, where he was from 1930 to 1933. He's best known as the author of Alei Shur, which is Musar classic, discussed character growth as it pertains to students of the Talmud. And he died in Jerusalem in 2005. So he publishes 2 volumes of Alei Shur. The first one was in 1966, and it contains his ethics analysis on the regimented life of a yeshiva student. And the second one was published 20 years later after the first one, so it was 1986. And it was kind of about the workshops he did for developing character traits. The book contains step-by-step instructions and specific exercises. So here, Rabbi Wolbe puts much emphasis on Seder, or having a schedule, in order to fully utilize one's capabilities. He actually devotes a section of each volume of Alei Shur to the topic. It's very important. He believed that the students should not rely on habit or on emotions, but they should structure their lives. He said the greater the person is, the more organized is his life. So in Alei Shur Volume 2, he presents the core of his method, which is, he calls it Hitlamdut, teaching oneself. And he stresses non-ego, learning from things. His method will slowly train you to contemplate nature, your surroundings, political events, and your home life, and learn from them. We studied a quote from the Babylonian Talmud in our first session, and he uses it to explain his method. You might remember it. There is nothing in creation that one cannot learn from. That's why the Blessed Holy One created so many things. As our sages already said, and here's what we studied, even if the Torah had not been given, we would nonetheless have learned modesty from the cat, and that stealing is objectionable from the ant, and infidelity from the dove, and appeasement in marriage from the rooster. And Rabbi Wolbe says, in this way we learn something from all living things, and that's what he stresses. He said that A yeshiva is a place where one learns to live, not just to learn. And you cannot learn Torah with bad character traits such as hate, competition, or jealousy. So now that we know a little bit about him, let's look at this text. I really like this text because I never thought of it this way before. Picture a pearl necklace with a small clasp. Which is more essential, the clasp or the pearls? At first glance, the pearls are more essential. But without the clasp, all the pearls would scatter, and all that would be left is the chain. Thus, the clasp seems more essential. A person is like a collection of pearls, full of potential, talents, character traits, and virtues. Seder is similar to the clasp on the necklace. Without Seder, all one's virtues and talents scatter, and one is left empty. Okay, comments. I'm thinking about how many kids are told they have ADD and how hard it is for these people to be organized and do all the things that are expected of them in the current times. I'm just putting this out there on that background because I've seen it so many times. Some things to think about. What does Rabbi Wolbe mean when he says, without Seder, all one's virtues and talents scatter and one is left empty? So I'm thinking, if you can't take all these things you have and put them into some kind of order where you share them, where you have a goal and you reach it by using your talents, then they may not be worth as much as if you can do that. And I think there are a lot of kids, especially the way things are organized nowadays, who have this challenge. And I'm not saying that I think it's their fault. I think a lot of it is the fault of the way things are organized and how much we expect of our students today. Comments from anybody?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was just thinking about the necklace idea. A couple things come to my mind. Each pearl is essentially the same size as the next pearl, and you can't really tell what each pearl stands for. So everybody might have a different kind of order in which they conduct their life, especially somebody with ADD. I know my husband has a lot of ADD. He thinks differently than I do, and it's frustrating. I'm more of an orderly person, but yet, you know, he has his own way of doing things and putting his life together, which is different than mine. He might have a necklace with a clasp, and I might, but they might just be ordered differently. So order might be different to one person than another person. I don't know. It's just a thought. And then I started thinking about, oh my gosh, how could I expand this to a class idea where everybody has different parts of their life they could write down on a little.
We have it, ping pong balls. We'll see, we'll get to it. Exactly.
Oh, okay. And they would put them in the order that they think it should be.
Yeah, but you have a very good point, which is that not only may our order be different, but our clasps might be different.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there is maybe not just one way to order your life.
Exactly.
And that's, I think, a good message. And so then another thing to think of, what is the clasp or the order in your life that keeps your midot and talents from scattering? And as we said, it might be different for each person, but they might want to think about that. Yeah. How do they organize their lives? Do they feel good about their organization? My daughter has ADD. She's frustrated all the time. You know, she just finished college. She's working. She's still frustrated all the time. It's hard. Mm-hmm. So it's something that I think if we start to discuss it and they're aware of it, it might help them at this age to kind of recognize that they have their own way of thinking and think about it. You know? So that's a good thing.
I was just thinking, just like there's multiple intelligences, there'd be multiple ways of creating order in your life. And how can we criticize somebody, you know, if their way is a little bit different?
Right, as long as they accomplish the goal of
exactly
putting order into their lives so that they can, my daughter uses adult as a verb, so they can function.
Yeah.
Right. One thing we can do right after this text is they can do a two-part activity. First, have the students make a list of 8 to 10 possible midot or talents or healthy lifestyle choices that they've made. if they're working still in Chavruta, they can get together with their partner and compare their list, and then save it to use in the activity, which is called Seder to Wear, which is the necklace we're talking about. We'll talk more about that after. But they can start just by looking at themselves and making a list of healthy lifestyle choices, which they either do or want to do, talents that they know they have, and midot that they feel they have that are positive. And then we can take another look at that after. So I'm going to go to the next text, which is from the same Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe. And yes.
You had read some things before about Rabbi Wolbe and about how this order combats ego and combats jealousy.
Yes.
And the pearls can be seen as representing the potential positives, but also the dangers of becoming self-obsessed about your own talents and your own ignoring priorities, and find that into the social media dilemma of every moment you're about to do something, you get a text and you completely forget about whatever it is that you said was your priority, because that becomes the big deal. Responding to that thing, putting yourself into that world, it's so important that any other priorities you have are out the window.
You know, that's really important. And I forgot that I was thinking about that as I was reading this, because we get so much stuff. We are constantly bombarded, as you said, with social media. And you've got to find your way. You've got to be able to hone out what's important and what you're going to focus on. So, and you're right, being self-obsessed really gets in the way. So that's a very good thing to point out.
The second word you used besides ego was also jealousy.
Mm-hmm.
We ironically become both self-obsessed and become other-obsessed. You know, I've got the other dilemma of social media is it's constantly pulling us to try to, go where that grass is greener, grab what our neighbors got, and think about that. And both of those things, it's all about me and then it's all about them, are pulling us away from the priorities that our midot, our values, tell us we're.
It's a really good point. Exactly. Social media and being jealous, it's not really concentrating on the other people. It's concentrating on the other people compared to yourself. And do I have what they have? And who's better? And it's still a very self-focused thing. And that's something we have to try to get past, because we'll never be happy if we do that. So the other thing he says, this is a long quote, but I think it's a very good one to put on top of what we just discussed. The order in the larger universe testifies to the wisdom of the Creator. As it is written, God founded the earth with wisdom, set the heavens with understanding, and broke open the depths with knowing. Similarly, in our own personal lives, to set up a Seder, order in our own lives that will last, we need to use wisdom, understanding, and knowing. We need to ask ourselves, what is it that I really want to achieve in my work or my spiritual practice? When this is clear to us, we then ask, what can I do now, given my resources, to move forward towards achieving this goal? We need to be very thoughtful about these two questions. It is crucial not to ask too much of ourselves, but we should also not ask too little. Our Seder, our order, must include enough sleep, which I'm sure nobody is doing, food, and other essentials. The first step in this practice is to meditate on the question, what do I want? Then we need to ask, what can I do now, given my resources, to achieve this? From this, one can build a daily and weekly Seder, or order. It's interesting because I think this is, you might say it's very basic, but I think that it needs to be said. For one thing, he puts a parallel between God and us. What is that parallel? So God founded the earth with wisdom, set the heavens with understanding. There is wisdom, understanding, and knowing. There is an order in the universe, and we need an order in our lives as well. It's like natural, and that's how I see it. And do you think that there is wisdom? Ask your students, is there wisdom in the way you're currently structuring your life? It's a good time to think, what do I want to change? What do I want to keep? What can I do more of? What I sometimes say is, when do you feel happy? When do you feel that you've accomplished something? What do you feel is worthwhile? And that's a way of structuring your life to have more of that and less of the stuff that you don't need. Do you ask enough of yourself? Do you ask too much of yourself? A lot of kids ask too much of themselves. I've found there are certainly ones that ask not enough of themselves, but there are also ones that are really hard on themselves, and they need to be realistic and try to find that happy medium. And by talking about sleep and food, let them think, does their schedule allow them to get enough sleep, eat regular meals, exercise, have time for personal reflection? Those are something to maybe start when you're young so that you know what you need, and as you grow into an over-scheduled adult, you'll know what to cut and how to try to make your life more even and more orderly. How does the order or disorder that you have on your desk, in your closet, or in your calendar reflect on your spiritual life? In other words, if things around you are in disrepair, what does that do to your spirit? Does it make you confused? Does it make you anxious? I think different people have different tolerance to that. I have a much lower tolerance to disorganization than other members of my family, unfortunately. And I think we all have to find a way to make ourselves comfortable with the amount of order that we have. So that's something to think about. Any comments? So another thing I want to just throw in here. I'll throw it in later, about making our lives more simple. It can also mean uncluttering our things, not just our schedules. And that's something that the students might also want to think about. There's a great hunger for things. And it's good to think about how many of those things are really going to make you happy and how many of them are going to just make you anxious. That's something to think of as we go forward too. I'm going to go to practices now, and you see there is a necklace made of ping pong balls. So this is called Seder to wear, and you'll need, for each student, 8 to 10 ping pong balls, a permanent marker, a large needle, just so they can make a hole in the ping pong balls, and some thread to put through so they can make a necklace. And on each ping pong ball, there's a truck outside, I'm sorry. On each ping pong ball, write a positive midah or a talent or a healthy lifestyle choice from the list they made earlier. And figure out how many ping pong balls they're going to arrange. Then punch 2 small holes through each with a large needle so they can just string them. And then they can wear their pearls for a photo, which I'd love to see on Facebook. And then everyone can combine their ping pong balls into one giant group strand. Figure out how the ping pong balls should be arranged. If there are duplicates, such as 2 people who are kind to animals or who like to cook or go to synagogue on Shabbat, or who almost get 8 hours of sleep a night, should these be next to each other, or should these 2 ping pong balls be apart? Like, how are they going to arrange them? They can create a giant Seder to wear necklace, and then they can all wear it together, which could be kind of fun. So that's one activity that kind of concretizes this idea. And here's another one, which I think can be also very helpful in figuring out how to order yourself. So take a look at your weekly schedule and see how you feel about it. They have this piece of paper here, and each day they can fill out their schedule, what they do on each day. And they can underline the activity that they're required to do and circle the activities that they enjoy doing. And the activities can have both an underline and a circle if they enjoy some of the things that they're required to do. Then they can draw a box around the other activities. And then they can look, and they can see just by looking graphically, do they have more circles, more underlines, or an even number of circles and underlines? And think about the activities that have a box around them. Do they need to do them? Do they want to do them? And why or why not? So they're basically assessing what they spend their time doing. Which is one way of prioritizing. Questions, comments? Okay, this is interesting. This is another practice that's called Seder something. So they should spend time putting something in order at home or at school. You could have them work on something together if there's something in your building that needs to be put in order. Photographs, a drawer, closet space, tidying up loose ends like following through on a volunteer project or sending thank you notes. Choose something that's meaningful and manageable. And then share their experience at the next class if they don't do it together in school. They can take photos, they can make a video, you can write a diary, like an entry style piece about it. And what you might want to do if you're doing something either at home or in your synagogue, maybe they can have a rummage sale if they find a lot of stuff that they can sell. Then there's an interesting book, which is popular now. It's called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. Has anyone heard of this book? So I just heard about it in December. It's really interesting. It's very much the same as what we're discussing. I'll send a follow-up link to it. Actually, I saw an article about it in she's Japanese. It was in some magazine, but it's very similar to the advice the Musar masters say about the midah of order, but it's modern, it's not Jewish text-based, but yet it supports the tradition, what our tradition teaches. So it might be interesting to read it and compare it or compare parts of it. So I'll send you a link. You can see her on the screen there. She talks about getting rid of stuff you don't need. She even goes to tell you how to fold your clothes in a certain way. So when you open your drawer, you can see everything that's in it. It's very interesting. And my daughter actually read it right before she moved. And I think for a while, she might have had everything in her drawers. Look at her when she opens it. I haven't seen her in a little while. I don't know what's there now, but it seems like a good idea. So it's something you might want to read about. And you might want to compare. Okay, and then there's some suggestions for social action. So a student has organizational skills, might want to help a friend get organized. And the friend that's needing to get organized might want to donate some of their skills, things that they're good at, to the person who's helping them. So they can exchange talents and spend a few hours helping each other, because that's a nice way that they can see that everyone has talents and two are better than one. Again, you can do a rummage sale or a garage sale, donate unwanted goods. You can be part of this activity also. If you live somewhere where you can go outside, you can go clean up a park. That's another kind of an organizational skill that is helpful. So these are all ideas you might do. It'd be exciting to see what you guys come up with. And now there are some other additional things that are fun to look at. This is Passover on Mars. So because we're talking about Seder, it's, you can't do that without reviewing the steps of the Passover Seder. It's in most Haggadahs. You want to do that. And just think, if you were someone who came from Mars, I don't know why I think about this often. Like if somebody just fell into my life, would they be able to understand from these 15 steps what the Passover Seder was all about? It would be interesting to see. What do we learn from observing the way things are and what's unsaid? And then there's this other thing. There are 50 things on this list. Some of them are going to be pertinent to the students and some won't, but see which of these are useful to put your life in order. It's lifemind.com. It's an interesting site to go to. And then there are more supplemental materials, which are really interesting. The first one's a TED Talk, How Complexity Leads to Simplicity. So this guy, Eric Berlow, he's an ecologist. He says you don't have to feel overwhelmed when you're faced with complexity. More information can lead to a better, simpler solution. Illustrating the tips and tricks for breaking down big issues, he distills an overwhelming infographic on U.S. strategy in Afghanistan to a few elementary points. I want to tell you that I watched this TED Talk. If you have older students, this is great. I still felt overwhelmed looking at these charts. I understood what he was saying, but I'm not sure I agreed with him. But you should look at it and see what you think. Now, the next one, How to Clear Clutter with a Clutter Maven. This one is awesome. She pledges to deliver viable solutions for an overstuffed home or work environment, aiming to clear the space necessary to operate in a healthy, peaceful, and inspirational space. So I don't know if you know this about me, but I moved from a 5-bedroom house to a 41-foot sailboat about 8 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so I know a lot about downsizing and figuring out what's important. And she's completely right. And she talks about what's really essential in your life. And it's a very interesting thing. I have to say, we put some stuff in storage when we first moved. We have not looked at any of it in 8 years. We're just getting rid of it. So it's interesting to think about what's important. She also talks about how your things are actually responsibilities. Every time you get something new, that's really a responsibility for you. You've got to keep track of it, and you've got to go around it when you're leaving your house. You've got to find your keys. They may be under this new thing. And what do these really offer you? She said that, and she's very right. What you have has to give you more than what you have to give it. It has to be a positive thing. So this is interesting, and you might actually want to watch it with your students. The next one is the Passover Seder. No conversation in order can omit the order of the Passover Seder. This is a review from My Jewish Learning. It's nice if you want to do that. And then great quotes on organizing your life with meaning. This is by Good Life Organizing. So it's really nice. There are a lot of quotes here. I just took one and put it here because I liked it. And it kind of talks about also what the Clutter Maven was talking about. And also what Harley was talking about with our own personal mitzrayim, or our own personal chametz, what's narrowing us. Eliminate physical clutter. More importantly, eliminate spiritual clutter. And we can think about how those two are related to each other also, which I think are interesting. So that brings me to my last thing, which is any questions or comments? Yeah.
I have a couple comments. One is, I know with kids, and I heard this kind of reiterated again. Yesterday I was listening to, if anybody heard the NPR interview with Terry Gross and a man who wrote a book called The Long Haul. He's a mover, and he also was a writer. I don't know if anybody heard it. It's really interesting. He was talking about people's possessions and moving and what things mean to people and how they keep things in storage. I mean, it's kind of right up this alley. It was a pretty fascinating viewpoint from a person who was a mover, but he kind of reminded me that people in their 20s and 30s spend time accumulating, and then in your 40s, 50s, 60s, you normally, not for everybody, I can't say for my parents, but you start to pare down and look at what's really important to you. And I know I've had this discussion with my kids as they're accumulating, and they said, well, Mom, we're still in our accumulating phases. And I'm like, if you only knew that all that stuff, how that clutters up your brain. But anyway, I recommend this story interview because it really made me think about some things I'd never thought of before.
If you have a link that I can send to people, send it to me and I'll put it in.
Yeah, I'll have to find it. Yeah, because it was really, really interesting. So
that is interesting.
Look for it. Yes.
I think it's going to be interesting also to see what the students feel is clutter, both emotional clutter and physical clutter, because they are in a different phase of their lives. I grew up in an apartment. I grew up on the Upper West Side. And my friend downstairs, every time she got something new, her mom would make her throw something out. Mm-hmm. And that's a really interesting way to be. My mother did not do that. She just didn't let me get anything because I was in the apartment.
No room.
But it's interesting to see how that would carry through. I think most of our students are not experiencing that. I think most of them are living in houses where they've got lots and lots of stuff. So it'd be interesting to see both the physical and the emotional, what they feel is essential and what isn't. What are their priorities? How do they organize their lives? And how does that organization give them structure? Because I think that the structure is a very important thing for kids this age. And moving from the structure of your school and your parents to your own internal structure is something that they need to do. And that it might be very interesting to look at this and see how this midah can help them to grow in that area. That's, I think, important.
And just as for our own possessions, do we really own them or do they own us?
Exactly.
Do they stop us from doing what we need to do? I mean, do they really, are they there to help us, or are they really harming us?
Exactly, because we are responsible for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will tell you that, now living on a boat, there's a lot of stuff I can't buy furniture. All my furniture is built in. It's great.
Right.
I walk through the mall, and it's like, no, I can't have this.
Mhm.
It's wonderful. It simplifies my life a lot.
Right.
So it'll be very interesting to see how they find this, because you're right. That's what the Clutter Maven says.
Hmm.
You are responsible for your stuff. It's not, if it's not giving you more than you're giving it, you shouldn't have it.
Right.
I think the other thing too is, people desire things, and I don't really understand. Like, we've been watching. Has anybody ever seen that show American Greed at all? And greed is behind, a lot of people's need to accumulate.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even think they really know why. They're accumulating, wanting, desiring, really complicating their lives so much. I mean, there's something in the brain that it's maybe addiction or something, that lights up when people buy things, have things. It's beyond me, but I know there's something mentally going on.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what you're describing comes out of the fear of, if I don't have that, I'm going to need it someday.
The fear of what?
If I don't have that, I'm going to need it someday.
Oh.
I don't know why I'm going to need it, but it looks like something I'm going to need, and I don't want to not have it when I need it. So, fear, which is very common, leads to the greed you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I holding on to all these things that I should be throwing away? And if you saw my office, it's how awful it is. And a big part of the reason is the thought of, well, I can't give that book away. Someday I may want to use that book, and that piece of paper may have this value. So these fears that
Fear.
So
true.
true.
Imagine, and then we build them up and up and up and up. They are what drive us to the greed. And so if you can ask them, what are you afraid of? And let them kind of play through just how silly those fears are. The classic thing that the therapists do with us when we talk about our lives being overwhelmed, trying to do many things, is, what would happen if it wasn't there?
Right.
And talk about that, then you can, maybe address it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's a very good idea. And if you have too much stuff, you can't even find the stuff you think you need. When you need it, you say, like, I know it's here somewhere, but I can't find it. So
Well, I know the kids, they talk about those shows that people hoard, because they watch some of those shows and they just quite can't believe it. But people very easily can turn into hoarders,
Mm-hmm.
and it happens overnight. I've seen it happen to people.
yeah. And fear does play a big part of it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's funny because I had some friends who came to visit from Israel a while back, and I noticed that they kept saying, I better eat now in case I can't find food later. And I was thinking, that's kind of funny because I eat when I'm hungry. But it was the same thought process. I might not be able to find this food later, so I'm going to eat it now. And it's an interesting thought. It's the same thing. I might need this later, so I'm going to keep it, even if I can't find it when I need it.
Were they like children of Holocaust?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, and they're it's not so much that way now, but this was like 25 years ago, maybe 25. It was a long time ago, and that's how their minds are working. And
it's embedded in them from their parents or their own experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Wow. So we have a lot to think about with our students. I think it's going to be a really interesting topic. And it'd be really interesting to see, first of all, how they see these things. And second of all, how this can change them and help them to go in a direction that's going to be more self-reliant and more self-assured once they can figure out what kind of order and structure they can put into their own lives and what it means.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So thank you everybody very much for being on this webinar. I really enjoyed it. And I'll send a follow-up with all the different things about our new curriculum and our Mitzvah month, and all that stuff. And it's really good to see you.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks, Nina.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a
Thank
good
you so
one.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.